Cycling for me has never been about the bikes. They've only ever been the prerequisite tool. I do not see just a bike race, I see riders on heroic journeys and warriors doing battle. At one point, cycling was the most popular sport in Europe because newspapers told magnificent tales about epic races and crafted the great champions into legends. But with the advent of television, cycling lost some of its mystique, and that golden age of journalism and narration has perished. So now let us try to return some romance to the beautiful sport. Let us praise and give glory to phenomenal performances to be remembered for decades to come. Let us dwell on the moments that inspire and move us. Let us chronicle the rise and fall of heroes. Let us chart these life-changing journeys, these cycling odysseys. All right, welcome back to another episode of Cycling Odysseys. I'm your host, Patrick Santino. Welcome to the show, especially if you're very new. Usually what I would say at the beginning of the show is if that intro isn't enough, go back, listen to the very first episodes in the queue. That's the only ones that would maybe be a necessary listen, maybe if you want more info, but not today. Today, I think this stage review of the 2020 Tour Stage 14, I think this one could almost function as an archetypal episode of exactly what I'm trying to do with this show. It's got all the random, cool, epic references to things of the past or myths even, and then it also tells a story about a good stage, and that's really the bottom line of this show. So also what I hope it would serve as is you could tell somebody, this is a big point of the show to begin with. I want this show to be something that if you're ever pressed by, some usual boring American who just likes American football and watches that for 9 hours every Sunday, you could show them the show, and this is how you describe, this is why I like bike racing. This is why this sport's so cool. This is why I love sitting down to watch this stuff. So maybe it doesn't achieve that. Maybe it does. I don't know. That's my goal of the show. I'm also just having fun with it. Absolutely having fun with it. This is one that I totally had fun with. I also thought my reading skills, my reading aloud skills are not the best, but this one I thought I did better than most, and I'm improving. So yeah, I'll be candid enough to say that, and yeah, so I'm excited to share this one with you. So without further ado, let's jump into it. I got some stuff to say afterwards because this is a fun stage. This was a fun report of mine, in my opinion, even though I know not many other people will be able to relate to it. But whatever. I had fun with it. This is great. This is what it's all about for me. Vercingetorix in the Peloton. Tour de France 2020, Stage 14, Clermont-Ferrand to Lyon, 194 kilometers. Bora dropped sprinters in Sagan's pursuit for green. City streets of Lyon produced thrilling finale. Peter Sagan of Bora Hansgrohe. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? No, not today at least. Today, our route has provided us a more apt comparison. Dear readers, please cast your minds back centuries, back to the 1st century before Christ, an age of strife and civil war. The Roman Republic was coming to an end as larger-than-life personalities vied for mastery in titanic clashes that would have impressed even Zeus and Kronos. Each had legions upon legions loyal to him, and with such legions they defeated their enemies, both foreign and Roman. Marius and Sulla, Cicero and Catiline, Crassus, Cato, Pompey and Caesar, Antony and Augustus. What a century of Romans it was. But the cast is not complete, for the enemies of Rome had just as charismatic and legendary leaders. Bold Jugurtha, the supremely wily Mithridates, freedom fighter Spartacus, famous Cleopatra, and the one that comes to mind today. He comes to mind, dear readers, because our star town of Clermont-Ferrand was his birthplace. In fact, in the main square of the city, they still have a grand statue of him on horseback, sword raised, leading his Gauls in defense of the homeland against Caesar's invading Romans. Yes, I speak of a time when France was not home to the Franks, but to the Gauls. For those who remember Caesar's Gallic Wars, you have guessed him by now. The statue remembers the tenacious Vercingetorix, who was so much more than just a name in a history book. Oh, if not for him, surely Julius would have conquered Gaul years earlier. Vercingetorix was the man who would not submit, the man who rallied the whole of Gaul to fight and not accept Roman rule. His hometown on the tour route today reminded me of him, and seeing the action of the day's stage reminded me of him too. Bora Hansgrohe has yet to take a stage victory in this year's Tour de France, and Peter Sagan faces an uphill battle to reclaim his green jersey. For 2 days in a row, the Bora team has animated the race with riders in successful breakaway escapes. But alas, none of their men have turned up a victory for the team, and yet they fought on today. Like Vercingetorix and his Gallic army, they tirelessly began hostilities again. The intermediate sprint came early this stage, but 6 kilometers before it was a small Category 4 climb. And yet even the small climb was enough for Bora Hansgrohe to mast on the front, string out the peloton, and break the legs of the sprinters. Like a lead-out train, they peeled off one by one as they climbed until Sam Bennett of Deceuninck Quickstep in green could no longer hold Sagan's wheel. Bennett did crack, and Sagan, with Bora teammate Max Schachmann, went over the top of the climb alone. They time-trialed together for the next 6 kilometers, and yes, dear readers, this is the Schachmann who just yesterday rode so bravely off the front until Dani Martinez of EF caught him. His legs must be made of iron. With 2 riders in the breakaway well up the road, Sagan crossed the line third to take 15 points. Behind, Bennett still placed well and took 10 points. Thus, Sagan's effort resulted in minimal gains on the scoreboard, but it must have been quite a psychological blow to Bennett in green. With that move, Peter Sagan and Bora Hansgrohe showed they were prepared to fight tooth and nail for every point all the way to the Champs-Élysées, as Vercingetorix and his army contested every field in Gaul 2,000 years before. The next trick up Bora's sleeve was the daring one I hoped they would pull. The Tour soon began the Category 2 climb of the Col du Buel. Never used in the Tour before, but a familiar name on the Dauphiné profiles. Remember the battle between Chris Froome of Ineos Grenadiers and Alberto Contador in 2014? With still 125 kilometers to go on the stage, the Bora Hansgrohe team went to the front once more and dropped the sprinters like Cees Bol of Sunweb, Caleb Ewan of Lotto Soudal, and the one in their crosshairs, Sam Bennett in green. And Bora was prepared to ride this gap all day to make sure Bennett would not return to score any points at the finish. You must be wondering, as I was, dear readers, how the Bora Hansgrohe riders seem to have bottomless wells of energy. The wonderful Simon Gerrans commentating for us today reminded us that this Bora team was mostly built of climbers prepared to support Emanuel Buchmann in the high mountains. With Buchmann no longer in GC contention, this team of climbers is well built to push the pace for Sagan on these hilly transition stages. In other years, this would have been a stage where a 20-man breakaway went up the road to contest the finish while the peloton took an informal rest day and finished half an hour behind. But not this year. Not until Sagan has secured his green jersey. For the next 40 kilometers, the chase was on. A minute or so behind Deceuninck Quickstep, they called themselves the Wolfpack. Aye, how have I not mentioned it before? Rode at the front of a large chasing group to return Sam Bennett to the peloton. But on the front of the peloton, Bora Hansgrohe, they consider themselves the band of brothers. Another thing I should have mentioned before. Rode hard to ensure Bennett did not return. Yes, it was a duel between the 2 cycling teams that have adopted team names beyond just their title sponsors. The Wolfpack versus the Band of Brothers. What amazing team names for such a match. But as Sam Bennett and the Wolfpack passed through the feed zone with 87 kilometers to go, they had not put a dent in Bora's lead. Thus, they waved the white flag, threw in the towel, gave up the chase. On this day, the Band of Brothers had defeated the Wolfpack. With one adversary defeated, Bora turned their eyes to the finale, where everyone else left would become an adversary for stage honors. Bora wanted to win a stage for its own sake, but if Sagan could take a victory, he would get a whole 50 points and be only 11 points down on Bennett by the end of the day. The final run-in was a tricky finish into metropolitan Lyon. Oh, Lyon, Lugdunum it was called in the ancient days of Rome. Was Irenaeus, your patron, watching the race today from above? Since its founding, it has been a hub of trade and a city of importance throughout French history. In cycling history, it is renowned as well, for Lyon has the honor to be the finishing town of the first ever stage of the first ever Tour de France. In 1903, the riders came in one by one as the 460-kilometer stage had taken the winner almost 18 hours to complete. Obviously, this would not be the case today. The The pace was ferocious and furious as the peloton would fight for the front to be in the best position to negotiate city streets at times as narrow as one car wide and filled with road furniture galore for the rest. Additionally, there were 2 Category 4 climbs on these city streets that would surely be used as launch pads for some ambitious escapists rolling the dice and trying their luck for a stage win. The peloton came to the bottom of the first hill with 12 kilometers to go, and it was Tiege Benoot of Sunweb who started the attacks. The climb was just over a kilometer long, but in that time, another Sunweb rider, Søren Kragh Andersen, went off the front as well. It was these 2 riders that set up Sunweb's Mark Hirschi win on stage 12, but just because Sunweb had already celebrated victory once didn't mean they would stop hunting for more. It was Leonard Kamna, yes, the one who lost the sprint to Martinez yesterday, who went on the front for Bora to chase them down. It took Kamna until the bottom of the descent after the climb to catch Benoot, but he caught him and found he had a gap on the peloton. He began the second climb solo with a few seconds lead, but behind Thomas de Gendt of Lotto Soudal, that escape artist, attempted a late attack. Though the hill was in the middle of a city, there was still switchbacks, and who flew around them the fastest? The musketeer, Julian Alaphilippe of Deceuninck Quickstep, launched his bid for glory, like an F-16 rising from the runway. He sprinted by de Gendt, hawked down Kamna, and kept going. But in hot pursuit was baby Spartacus, Mark Hirschi, going for glory again, with a string of riders following behind. The musketeer did look good this day, but there was too much firepower behind, and with 4 kilometers to go, it was all back together. Then Hirschi counterattacked as Alaphilippe was brought back, and every alarm bell was ringing. Who chased him down? The man who refuses to submit, the Vercingetorix of the peloton. Peter Sagan himself would not let him escape. Oh, it was really a sight to see when Sagan chased Hirschi down. He really did seem like Vercingetorix. Sure, at this point, Sagan no longer has the flowing locks or the bushy facial hair that every Vercingetorix portrayal shows, but you could see it in his body language that he was doing everything in his power to better his cause today. With 3 kilometers to go, he caught Hirschi, only for the strung-out peloton to come back together and Sunweb's Søren Kragh Andersen to launch another counterattack. To chase down Hirschi had taken almost everything Sagan had, and it had taken everyone else almost everything they had just to stay on the train Sagan was leading to catch Hirschi. Thus it was that Sunweb played a blinder again. With this Andersen attack, everyone hesitated for just a few seconds to see who would sacrifice themselves to chase him down. Sagan couldn't do it again, and that was all it took. Andersen had a few seconds gap, committed everything, and came in solo 15 seconds ahead of everyone else, who collectively couldn't cobble together a chase behind. In the sprint, Sagan only managed 4th, but it was a respectable showing for how much work he had done in the final. It gave him a reasonable haul of points, but at the end of the day, Bennett still leads the competition, 262 to 219. And remember, dear readers, going into Paris, Sagan needs a comfortable lead in the green jersey, because Bennett will most likely place higher, even win, on the Champs-Élysées. And so the task to reclaim green is still a tall order. But Sagan and Bora did what they could today. They fought bravely and are prepared to fight on despite the odds stacked against them, like Vercingetorix did. Vercingetorix literally translates to Superior Warrior King. Has not Peter Sagan embodied such a title for the past decade? But alas, Vercingetorix's fall eventually came. Sagan is 30 years old and has already been around for a very long time. Alas, we shall soon have to brace ourselves for his twilight and fall. I guess, dear readers, we can only hope his end is dealt out by another mighty warrior as Vercingetorix's was. For Julius Caesar to defeat Vercingetorix, he had to build a wall around the entire city of Alesia, a circumvallation, where Vercingetorix was held up, only to have tens of thousands of other Gauls show up to liberate their warrior king. The outnumbered Caesar had to build a wall around his own wall, a contravallation, and fight Vercingetorix and the Gauls on both sides. And he did, and he won. Yes, though Vercingetorix fought to the end, he was finally defeated by a better man. It seems one day Peter Sagan will have to face such an adversary too, but I hope it is not now. No disrespect to Sam Bennett, who is likable, talented, and a dynamic sprinter. But unless he wins this green jersey by a very wide margin, I am not sure I can see this as a real vanquishing of Peter Sagan. The jury's relegation weighs on my mind, and of less importance, in the first week, Peter Sagan was not up to proper snuff. And beyond this year, Sam Bennett is already 30 years old. How much longer does he have at the top of the sport? Vercingetorix demanded Caesar and his men to go to every length to defeat him. When Caesar did, with his double-walled siege of Alesia victory, his men had surely become the best fighting force in the world. It was in the wars with Vercingetorix and the Gauls that Caesar earned undying loyalty from his men and developed his masterclass skills of generalship and diplomacy that would allow him to conquer the Roman Republic. Without defeating an adversary like Vercingetorix, would Caesar have had the courage to cross the Rubicon and the skill or endurance to win an arduous Roman civil war? Who in the Peloton could be a worthy Caesar to defeat the Vercingetorix Sagan? My nomination would be Wout van Aert of Jumbo-Visma, who some are now calling the artist. Surely he has the talent and is still only 25. As I said before, I hope Sagan wins an 8th green jersey this year because of an intrusive ruling that has hindered his chances. But when another eventually comes to vanquish Sagan, as someone must, I hope Sagan is on his highest form and the challenger is just as mighty an adversary, and the battle is as epic as Alesia was 2,000 years ago. All right, so that was Vercingetorix Sagan. How awesome is he? Peter Sagan, what more? Well, actually, much more can, will, and should be said. But that was an awesome stage. I don't care if he failed, in quotes, failed. That was awesome. I loved Bora this tour. I loved how hard they worked that stage. Seriously, I said it in there. This could have been one where, whatever, you just let the break go. This is an informal rest day before the big day on Sunday, and then you got the real rest day afterwards. Nope. Bora, with their legs of iron, they went out and took every day they could to grab points to help Peter Sagan get back into the green jersey because he got screwed over and shafted by the shadow officials who decide these stupid relegations. I mean, as far as relegations go, fine him $30,000 for what he did in stage 12. I don't really care. Maybe he deserves it too, but I mean, I just hate that decided the green jersey, as we'll see. Yeah, but anyways, this was a fun one. How many other people know Vercingetorix? If you had a Latin class, you might know who he is. And, as far as I'm concerned, it's not like I've paid attention when because I did have Latin classes. That's the funny part. But it's not like I paid attention to that. I just remember the name, and then it's like years later, it's like, that was kind of cool. That was, I mean, we read about it for a whole year, and all they did was, it was all battle. Like in Latin class, it was weird. All we learned was war words so that we could read Caesar and about how he massacred Gaul and conquered it. And I don't know, it was kind of interesting. Not what you expect for a foreign language class, I guess. But that's also the stuff that that goes straight to my heart. I mean, that 1st century BC, if you're a fan of history, I think anybody that's a fan of history would have to acknowledge that that's a contender for most interesting centuries of history ever. The standard boring answer, or not boring, the standard cliche answer is the 20th century. And the world wars were pretty interesting in the lead up and stuff, but the more and more I hear about it, that's just not the most interesting part. If anything, that's falling out of the top 10 most interesting centuries ever. I think the most interesting centuries have to be 1st century BC, 1st century AD for completely opposite reasons, and then potentially, the 5th century AD when the Western Roman Empire is falling, because it's such a shrouded, mysterious topic. We all know that barbarians are overrunning it and stuff, but I mean, just how did this all break down and crumble? I mean, this was Rome that lasted 1,000 years. So interesting. But anyways, that's just me. Hopefully it was fun though with the comparisons, and I don't think it was very outlandish to compare Sagan to Vercingetorix, because I mean, Vercingetorix, he's always pictured with bright red hair, total ginger. But Sagan, I mean, in 2016, 2017, when he really had the locks going and he had the facial hair to match too, I mean, damn, he looked like him. If he dyed that hair red, I mean, he was Vercingetorix back in those days. And he did fight, he did hold on. Well, it was pretty awesome to see all that. I mean, he could have gave up. He knew he was doing the Giro later in the year. He could have just, settled for that. But no, this is Sagan. He's going to make it hard. His team made it hard. It's pretty awesome. What I do feel bad about, though, is that somehow, and I really can't even believe how this eluded me, but somehow I was forgetting that Bora had named themselves the Band of Brothers, and I was forgetting that Deceuninck Quickstep had named themselves the Wolfpack. I mean, what a missed opportunity for so many blog posts. I think I even forgot to do it in their team previews. I mean, I really, such a missed opportunity. I feel so stupid for missing that. But these are the realities we live with. What can I say? Last thing I would say too, just as because it's related to those names, is Wolfpack. Personally love that name because that was my high school mascot. It wasn't the Wolves, it was the Wolfpack. How sick and how cool is that? Oh, that's such a the Wolfpack is a solid 5 times superior to the Wolves. The Wolfpack. You work together. Oh, camaraderie. Oh, awesome. Awesome. I loved it. And this stage was fun. This was why I kind of do the show, to make goofy comparisons to that. I mean, Vercingetorix was kind of the main character in this, but Julius Caesar, I love studying Julius Caesar. He's such an interesting character. Do I like him or love him? Definitely not love him. I find him love studying him. I don't love him personally. He did a lot of controversial things, just as anybody from the ancient world did. But I do respect him as a leader. He was pretty unbelievable in that regard. Larger than life character, which is the fun thing to, when I say study, I just kind of read this stuff as hobbies. It's fun as hobby. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, I think that should be long enough for this show. All right, so here's what I got planned next. We're gonna do stage 15 tomorrow. And that gets us to the second rest day of the tour. Obviously, if you remember what happened, one certain team completely dominated, one certain team completely floundered, and it was kind of surprising and a very big deal, even though it was so anticlimactic. With that said, after that, I will then jump to that certain to say they were victorious is a little premature, isn't it? A little wrong even. So with that, I will then jump to that team's team preview, and then I'll rattle off a couple team previews, I think, and then we'll go back, finish up the stages, and then no, we won't finish up the stages. We'll do a couple more stages, then I'll keep rattling off team previews. It's getting to crunch time because I have to have all of this stuff done by opening weekend. I also, just FYI, I totally say weekend because I'm an American, but all the British people, they're like, oh, opening weekend, which is Omloop at Nieuwsblad and Kuurne Brussels Kuurne, which is in Belgium. That's their opening weekend. You can't have any road races before that. So that's pretty sweet. And that is the official start of the season. And it sounds like it's on. And though they haven't had as many prep races, that's going to be the real deal. We all know that. Omloop is rising year by year in importance. And I got to detail that before it comes out too. So I don't know. Will I have all this stuff done by UAE Tour? I want to. I probably will, but will it be out by then? That's the big question. And then I got to do some prep to, introduce you to the opening season. I do the prep ones purely so that I can say, go listen to the prep ones so that when the main action comes, I can just jump into it. So the prep ones, any preview kind of things, that's only for beginners, really. As rule of thumb. Not to say I won't have anything good to say, but that's more so for anybody that's new to the sport to try to give them an introduction. Real fans potentially know everything. Maybe I put in some fun stuff, but, who knows. It's not like I make any serious good predictions. Because I think I've said it before in one of the team previews, but when I predict things, it's only what I want to see happen, and it's maybe on the fringe of logically possible. So that's kind of the deal there. All right, so this is now a long episode, so I'm going to end it here. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for listening, everybody. Follow me on Twitter, Cycling Odysseys. Follow me on the blog at cyclingodysseys.com. Send me an email at cyclingodysseys@gmail.com. Please subscribe to the show. Leave a 5-star review. I'll read them out eventually. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. Vive la cyclisme.